All right, everyone, welcome back to Nortman Reviews. I'm John, and we're finishing up the final issue of the Avengers Disassembled storyline. This is Avengers number 503, Chaos Part 4. This is the final story arc in the main Avengers line. I mean, it's up to 500 issues. Before they canceled it, they rebooted, revamped the title, and restructured it as the New Avengers. Probably because at the time sales on the Avengers weren't doing too well. Like the Avengers and Fantastic Four were big in 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know. Then the 90s, probably with like the rise of the X-Men and stuff like that. Their titles just, I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was like that talked about. There were probably some good storylines here and there for sure. But I don't know. If you know like why they decided to do this, maybe they just felt like they needed a revamp. But they canceled the title and made New Avengers. But they had to disassemble the original team first. So previously is the worst day in Avengers history. Jack of Hearts, who they thought was dead, shows up out of nowhere. He self-detonates, taking half of the Avengers mansion and killing Scott Lang, a.k.a. Ant-Man, a.k.a. Paul Rudd, in the process. So that's how it started. They're like, what the fuck? Before the Avengers can react to the tragedy, Vision comes down in a Quinjet, crashing down into the mansion, unleashes a small horde of unstoppable Ultron robots, even though they did stop them. There was only 5 of them. Is 5 a horde? Nah, you tell me. During the fight, She-Hulk loses control of herself, like hulks out like crazy and hurts a lot of the team, including the Wasp, I think, and going on a wild rampage. Across town, Iron Man was kind of going a little bit nuts. He was addressing the United Nations because he's the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and he finds himself drunk, and he's out of control. He almost like wanted to kill a representative from Latveria, where Doctor Doom is from. The vicious public display in front of the United World leaders leaves him devastated and humiliated. But he said like he wasn't drunk. He did not drink. He was, in rehab. He had been sober for such a long time. He's like, I didn't drink anything, but I know that feeling. And then they sent out a call, Code White, the highest level emergency. The assembled Avengers, past and present, find themselves, along with like the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Spider-Man, a whole bunch of people. They were attacked by an alien army and the Kree, which ends up taking the life of longtime Avenger Hawkeye before retreating back into the reaches of space. Like everything that bad is happening and that can go wrong is going wrong within like the span of this one day. And they're like, what the fuck is happening? Like, this cannot be coincidence. Out of nowhere, the Avengers are met by the floating astral form of Doctor Strange. He announces that the attacks on the Avengers are magic based. But who was behind it? And if you know, you know. You know? So, where's the credits page? Maybe it's at the end. But usually David Finch, this was done by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by David Finch. And David Finch did like the previous 3 issues, and he does this one, but there's this flashback sequence, and this is not David Finch. This is Olivier Coipel. Such a good artist. He's actually one of my favorite artists. I remember seeing him here, didn't really pay too much attention to this art. Looking at it now, I think it's really good. But I really noticed him on House of M. And then he did stuff on Thor. And he's just such a good artist. So, doing a little flashback, people are hanging out at a pool. There's Hawkeye looking a little sexy. And you got the Wasp Janet Van Dyne talking with Scarlet Witch. And they're kind of talking about girl stuff. The monthly friend came a little bit late. They're like, you thought I was pregnant? You thought you were pregnant? I guess she had hooked up with... No, it wasn't. So this was Janet. Yeah, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, who thought she was pregnant, and she had been sleeping around with Hawkeye. She's like, that's what the world needs. And they kind of like wave to each other. She's like, are you still seeing each other? Are you still fucking? No, not really. And they're talking about having kids and how crazy that would be as a superhero. Avengers should not have kids. Superheroes should not have kids. That should be a rule. And you thought you could have two. The Wasp was saying this to Scarlet Witch. And she just kind of has this look on her face like, what the fuck does that mean? And she said, what? What? It's like, no, what does that mean? Two of what? And she kind of realizes that she said something that maybe she shouldn't have. So she gets up and Copiel takes the opportunity. And she says, nothing. What is it? I'm just getting tipsy from all the margaritas. I gotta go pee. I'll be back in a little bit. So she runs off. And Scarlet Witch is just like, what was that? Thinking to herself and just kind of closing her eyes. Like, she's like, that was fucking weird. Why would she say that? So now it goes back to present day. There's the Avengers Mansion. It's still smoking and on fire. And there's Doctor Strange. That's a cool shot with all the folds and the shadows. And he's addressing the Avengers. And they're like, wait, I don't understand. What is happening to us? I'm going to have to read a lot of this dialogue for it to make sense. He's like, some of you I met, some I don't. I'm Dr. Stephen Strange. I'm fucking badass when it comes to magic. I'm talking from the astral plane, blah, blah, blah. I've taken the liberty of casting a handful of cloaking spells around the area. I've done all I can to keep unwanted eyes and ears away and blind, at least momentarily. And he says, clearly you are in immediate and grave danger from a magic force of immense power. He's like, I'm sorry I couldn't get here before this. I wasn't in a place where I could see it properly. But now I see the magics have been molested in an attack aimed at you. And he's like, well, who? Who murdered our teammates? Who did this? He says, the events of the past day, the devastation, the bedlam, I must ask you, is there anyone the Avengers have dealt with who has this level of mystic power? Someone who could orchestrate this level of chaos? Captain America, I guess, is the first to realize, and he closes his eyes and there's tears coming out. And then it's another flashback. It goes back, it switched to Finch, go back to Copiel, and it's the Scarlet Witch, and she's going to Agatha. Agatha Harkness, she was in that WandaVision. She's an old woman here in this version. But she's like, Agatha, I need to talk to you. And he's like, why do people think I once had 2 children? And Agatha, she has like a T, and it kind of makes her stumble, and she's silent. And Wanda is like, where are my children? And she's freaking out. She's getting mad. Tell me where my children are. So it goes back to the Avengers, and now in present day. And they all realize that that Doctor Strange is talking about Scarlet Witch. He's like, no, she's our friend. She's a good person. She doesn't have that in her blood. And then someone says, she does, actually. And Nick Fury is the one to point out she is Magneto's daughter. And before she was an Avenger, she was a mutant terrorist. She was a premier member of the Brotherhood. And Spider-Man chimes in, and she married a robot. And they all look at him. He's like, no offense, but the Vision is a robot. And it's like, if I was dating a robot, someone would say it about me behind my back. Vision's not a robot. He was as real as any of us. He told me he was a robot. Android. Hey, I like him. I was just saying, And Falcon's like, what are you even doing here? It's like, I was helping with the aliens a second ago. And so they start talking about Wanda and that she's had a lot of shit going on in her life that's bad. And even if you include what happened with her children, and that was bad. And then Doctor Strange, like, wait a minute, I delivered those children. Did something happen to her children? And here's where they explain it. This happened in an actual storyline once, right? I feel like Robert did a video on these somewhere, somehow, some way. I remember watching a video of him talking about it. But Beast is here, and he's in his new X-Men persona, where he's looking more like a cat than an ape. But Beast used to be an Avenger, so she's going to show up. And he says, she conjured them into existence. They weren't actually real. She created them with her hex powers. She willed them into existence. She wanted them very badly, is how it was told to me. Just like in that WandaVision show. She, in a way, tricked herself into giving birth to them, but they didn't really exist. And then they talk about Agatha Harkness was the one who figured out what the children really were. And there was some kind of weird thing with Mephisto and demons and weird shit like that, too. It's fucking complicated. So they're like, she erased them. She took care of it. And Doctor Strange's like, why the fuck wouldn't you come to me when this happened? They're like, well, what are you thinking is happening? Like, we don't have much time. There's been always been an uneasy structure to Maximoff's powers. A mutant, she was born with her powers over magic, her hex power. It wasn't earned through spiritually. She didn't learn it like Doctor Strange and all the others, the ancient one. It was just given to her without understanding its consequence. And then they're like, well, but didn't she have trouble controlling her powers in the past? And Cap's just kind of like, he's been quiet, but he says yes. But they're like, chaos magic, that can be reversed. You can bring everything back. You can reverse everything before it's too late. All the people who died. And then Doctor Strange, he kind of gives them bad news. He's like, magic isn't an illusion. This is not a magic trick. These events, they actually happened. Your friends are dead. I tried years ago to take Wanda on as a student, but her obligations to her family and to her teammates distracted her. So he's like, I'm not sure of the level of her powers. They may be too limited, but her hexes always seemed much too limited to carry on what was going on here. And then Carol Danvers says, like, she tapped into something that she called the chaos magic. She can control the probabilities of reality. And Doctor Strange's like, what are you talking about? What is that? So they're just kind of freaking out, like trying to rationalize how this could be possible with Wanda, right? Some of them are willing to believe, some aren't. And then Iron Man comes dropping down. They're like, no, you're wrong. Wanda was with me today at the UN. She was right there. She could not have done this. And then Strange goes on to explain, it's possible that she isn't even aware of what she's doing. And then Iron Man's like, look, you're smart, Doctor Strange. You know what you're talking about, but we need more proof. I need more than a theory. And he says the chaos magic, the source of her new reality-altering powers. And he's like, there is no such thing as chaos magic. And they're all kind of silent, like, whatever that means. So it flashes in between some, like, Doctor Strange explaining stuff and some of these old images from past issues of Avengers, like going way back, probably decades past, of Wanda kind of doing evil stuff or going nuts at some point. He's like, forget that we're talking about your friend and listen to me the story of an orphan mutant with a sordid, violent past, with powers she did not earn nor can control, powers she never fully understood. Can you understand the delicate mindset of a woman, a person who has control over reality? It means reality controls her. Imagination becomes the enemy. Structure disappears. Reality, eventually, she knows it starts to slip away, elude her, blur. Drama, conflict, tragedy, they become excuses to change the world to fit the image that she has for it. Anything she doesn't like, she can change, no matter how slight. People, places, things, everything is hers to change. But every time she does that, every time she gives into her desire, no matter how noble they may be, a little more of her slips away. So anytime she uses her powers, she like loses a little bit of herself, a little bit of her mind, a little bit of her sanity. And she has like crazy powers that can basically change anything. She loses herself, her reason. But she struggles quietly every day to keep it in check, to keep it together. For a person of strong mind and body, for a person of pure spirit, the task of coping with these powers would be all-consuming. But here's a woman for whom, by the nature of her upbringing and chosen occupation, every day is stressful and chaotic. And after a life lived with lost love, violence, and drama, what does she do? She says to herself, I deserve happiness. I want to bring something into the world that is good, that I can love. And she gives birth to children, even though she can't. She played mommy to make herself feel like something she thinks is normal. And that ends tragically as well. If I told you a story like this, you'd say you'd say to yourself, this sounds like a person who has lost control of themselves on a deep psychological level. You say this sounds like a disturbed person. How does anything I have described not sound like Wanda Maximoff? And it goes into even more panels of her in the past doing evil things, her losing her mind, her grip on reality, just being not intentionally doing stuff, I'm sure, but just being a fucking danger to herself and the world. I mean, it's even going back to like her first appearance. Did she first appear in X-Men or Avengers? I know she was with Magneto in the Brotherhood. So they're like, oh God, no, that can't be. Wanda doesn't even remember what happened to her children. And like, maybe she figured it out. And she's like, if that's true, why is she attacking us? And they're like, I don't know. And Wonder Man here is like, you're fucking wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I hope so, but I am not wrong. Iron Man says there's only one way to find out. Can we find her? And he's like, yeah, I can find her, but I warn you, if this is true, then there's no way you could be prepared for what we'll see when we do find her. So now we go to Wanda, and I mean, I'm no colorist, but like most of this scene like seems like it's either in like the colors are toned way down, and it's like either in black and white, except for her like some spaces here, specifically her red outfit. And so she's having this kind of like moment with these kids and her family. She's bringing in dinner. There's Vision. They're sitting around a table. Is there Wonder Man? She had a thing for him too, right? So she's living like a happy life, whatever. You know, there's these two kids. And in the door, in walks Captain America. So they found her, and she realizes it. And Captain America says, let me help you, please. And she's like, well, go away. And these kids are saying, I told you we should have punished them all. So in the first issue, at the very end, after all the shit was starting to go down, like you see these voices in like a black space. Like you didn't see who was talking. And people talking about how the Avengers needed to be punished. So apparently it was these kids, these figments, these conjured up unreal versions of these kids. Basically like weird pieces of her mind. And they're like, one is being like nice about it. Like, Captain America's nice, he cares about her. The other's like, just no, this, fuck you, get out of here. And Captain America's trying to calm her down. He's like, these aren't your children, they aren't real, you don't have children. And they're yelling at him. And Cap's like, if you're, and they're not talking, it's you talking, it's your voice. I hear you, I want to help you. And he kind of mentions to Wanda that we've grown very close lately, right? And I don't really know exactly what was going on. I just remember before this in Avengers, a few issues before this, I remember seeing a cover. I never picked it up because I wasn't reading Avengers at the time. But of Captain America and Scarlet Witch like making out, like embracing. like they were becoming an item. So this picks up from there. We've grown very close, right? I want to. And then the kid, the one that's kind of like, fuck you, Captain America, get out of here, says, look. Captain America looks behind him. There's fucking Red Skull and all these Nazis. I mean, obviously, that's the thing that's not really there and not really happening, but they shoot at him, and it's real enough because he goes flying out the window as he deflects that attack. And the kids are like, don't let them take us away. She's like, it won't happen again. And she says, no one will take you away from me ever again. So this is a cool scene. Her floating down. There's the rest of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and everybody else. Captain America's there. And Carol Danvers is fucking pissed. She's yelling at her, do you know what you've done? You killed Vision, and you killed Vision, Wanda. You killed your husband. You killed Scott Lang, Hawkeye, Janet's in a coma. And she just says, stay away from my children. Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel, Warbird, whatever her name is. Carol's like, you destroyed the... She's fucking pissed. She's ready to take her out. But out of nowhere, there's Rogue. You know the history Rogue and Carol Danvers have, and like David Finch took the opportunity right there. Smack. And not so fast, sugar. And then Scarlet Witch is like, you can't have them. So she's just making things show up out of nowhere, conjuring things. And then, boom. The Avengers are just being attacked by all these, like, random ass, like, being, like, there's the fucking Hulk. He's not there. He looks like he's fighting Doc Samson. Wolverine is taking out Beast. There's multiple different versions of Spider-Man, so that must be, like, his clone thing. There's Tigra. I don't know who these are. There's Ultron fighting, I think, who's that? Jocasta. Red Skull and Captain America. Can't really tell what's going on down here. Thing is doing a thing. Rogue, not really there. Captain Marvel or Ms. Marvel. Warbird, whatever. That's a pretty crazy image, right? There's Scarlet Witch right there in the corner, making everything happen. She's flinging her magic. I like that little image there. The motion of it, it's like it's swirling around. Her fake kids are cheering her on. She's continuing, and then they see something up there, and someone says, Wanda Maximoff. She's crying, losing her goddamn mind. There's Doctor Strange. You will stop this, Magnus, now. You're hurting your friends, hurting yourself. This stops now. So they're having a battle of magics. And she's like, you cannot take my children away from me again. This is all like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, right? Same kind of crazy shit that she's going for her children. She conjures up Dormammu there, who's attacking Strange. He's saying some incantations, saying I'm still there. And says something, look, there's a fucking crazy look in her eyes. And there he is. This is not his astral form. This must be his real form. The Eye of Agamotto will show you the truth. Something blinds her. You will stop this madness. These magics are not yours to abuse. And she's shutting her eyes, and she's like overcome by whatever spell he does here. And she falls, and her magic looks like it's dissipating. Captain America's there to catch her. And Doctor Strange's like, I'm sorry if there's no other way. She is alive, but she is gone. Her mind was in a delicate state to begin with. Captain America's like looking at her, very sad. And then it cuts to this different scene, and it's Nick Fury and Shield, and they're like, what are we looking for? And he says, we'll know it when we find it. And they flash their lights in here. This is a cool image, and it goes up to this body. It looks like Agatha Harkness, but it's a dead, rotting corpse. It's like, how long has she been rotting here? Long time. I don't really know what that means. I mean, besides that she's dead. Did Wanda kill her? Back here in this one of these initial... Where the fuck is it? like when she met her here, did Wanda kill her and she's been dead that whole time? So now the Avengers are like, what do we do? Can we wake her up? How can we help her? And a voice from above says, you can give her to me. And there's Magneto. Give me my daughter. Now, I'm not sure where the X-Men timeline is at this point. This is December 2004. I know in New X-Men, I mean, that's how Beast is dressed up. Magneto showed up at the end of that, and he did some crazy shit where he attacked the world. X-Men had to take him down. But I guess that wasn't the real Magneto, so I'm very I can't remember. I think I was confused then. I'm still confused now where this was in the timeline and what was going on with Magneto and everything. But I think, yeah, the thing with Genosha had happened already, where it got annihilated. I don't know. If you guys know what was going on with Magneto at this point, I'd love to put the pieces together. But anyways, there he is. That's a cool image. Magneto, you know, the Avenger, like the X-Men are not in this at all, except for Beast showed up for a minute. But now there's Magneto, and he's like clashed with the Avengers before. Like, he's such a threat, the Avengers are bound to like have an issue with him. So Captain America gives her over to him, and Magneto says, Xavier was right. It was you. And he says, I failed you. And they ask, where are you taking her? But he just leaves. He just floats away with her. And you see a bunch of people like hugging and saying their goodbyes, and they leave. And they're gone. They leave. That's the end of the book. I mean, it has this backup story. By Stanley. Yeah, so this is a reprint by Stanley Jack Kirby. So this is kind of like the first time that she's being introduced as an Avenger. So yeah, there you go. So after this, I guess they did have like an Avengers finale. I don't have that, or I don't know what was in that. But then the next month is where we started with New Avengers, which I've already looked at. So this is kind of a cool story, and it's like all like the Marvel universe, in my eyes, was starting to culminate together. Like you could read stuff, like you could read the Avengers Disassembled, you could read what was going on in Astonishing X-Men. And it was all kind of lining up a little bit. And it eventually like culminated in some big storylines, especially with House of M. And then especially with Avengers versus X-Men. But we'll stop it here. We'll have to look at something else besides Avengers. I'm getting through some of these final issues of Astonishing X-Men. And then real soon we're going to be picking up the Age of Apocalypse and looking at that. And then probably moving over to some DC stuff. Once we get through that, who knows what else I'll be looking at. But I definitely want to look at House of M soon. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you liked it. I hope, do you like these Avengers comics? I think it's a fascinating story, the way it was done here. It was a little kind of confusing to me initially, but it all came together in my mind eventually. So thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.